Welcome back to the Tea Symposium here at the Victoria Tea Festival Revival. I am stepping in for Jen. My name is Jared. I helped to introduce the festival at the beginning here. I'm with the International Tea Appreciation Society. I'm also a co-owner of Jagasilk. And I have with me today a tea enthusiast extraordinaire, Mr. Paul Bradley, who I'm really excited to have on. I also, unfortunately, have virtually, as much as we wanted him here. And I say unfortunate because Pedro Vigilon planned on being here in person, but he ended up getting sick. So he's going to keep us all safe, and he's going to join us virtually from Richmond. But the cool thing is he's going to do it right in front of the tea trees that he's growing in Richmond that he was going to talk about. So that's kind of rad. So big hand for Paul and for Pedro for joining us.
Thanks, Jared.
And Pedro is actually the co-owner or the founder, one of the founders of O5 Tea, and I consider him a dear friend. We've traveled to Bhutan together. We often talk tea together. We bought tea mills together. Really great relationship with Pedro. So I'm stoked. And then Paul watched we did during the pandemic a 24-hour tea symposium because we couldn't have people here, and I was the co-host the entire time, and I was all like, wow. Paul actually watched the entire thing.
I dozed off for about half an hour around 4 a.m. But other than that,
well, I don't know where it is. Okay. That's not.
I was still on there though.
You were still on. Okay.
Eyes closed for a little bit.
Eyes closed for a little bit. I kind of feel like I did that at points. But we have a talk today on backyard tea making and the whole concept of growing tea on the island here, on the mainland, just in this climate. And just this idea, sorry, my earpiece. Are we okay there, Mark? My earpiece came off? Okay. The climate here, a lot of people think you can't grow tea. And I think it's been proven by those large plants behind Pedro there. There's a farm called Westholm down up island a little bit.
Yes,
been growing some plants. We have some successes there. And we also have Paul here growing just as a hobbyist. And I want to do a talk about just what these guys are doing and how they're keeping their plants alive. So, yeah. I don't know if you wanted to add a few more words to your introductions. Pedro, did I cover everything, or are we doing?
You did, man. Thank
okay.
you. Yeah. Nothing to add.
Okay, all right.
We can talk about some live plants and some crafting here. You know, Paul was a big inspiration since I knew that guy was keeping some plants alive and handcrafting some delicious stuff. And now these things have grown a little bit more, as you can see around here.
Yeah, pretty substantial. And, how many plants are there, Pedro?
These are 5 trees. And there's a bunch of baby trees here on the back. And the approach has been, as you've seen my family and all. And for good or evil, there's no one Chinese or Japanese there is no tea tradition in my family.
Sure.
Just,
yeah, same here.
Probably my grandparents drank something else back in Mexico. They drank definitely something else back in Mexico. But what they did give me was a lot of curiosity. So like you guys in Jagasilk, I travel a lot to Origin and hang out with a bunch of folks in Bhutan and Japan and Yunnan and what have you. And I try to learn as much as possible from those guys. What are they doing? Right. And I think one of the best ways of learning is just trying to do it yourself. And that's what these trees have enabled me to do. Remember our friend Mig Mahamo, who showed us how to make fermented Bhutanese tea?
Yeah, the oak ash fermentations. Yeah.
Oak ash fermentation. So you can see these guys, they're not like hers, but they're oak ash fermented.
That's so cool.
Nice.
Leaves from this, thanks to our friend Migma. Now, I am glad that my Bhutanese grandfather, if I had one, is not watching because they don't look that one.
I'm sure they taste great. And what Pedro's talking about is there's an ancient style of tea making that involves using oak ash during the Kilgreen process. So when you're processing the tea leaves, and they're boiled, and then the oak ash makes it pretty alkaline. But then they're piled and let to dry in piles. It's kind of like a different tea.
Wood way, like a Chinese pu'er fermentation.
Yeah, like a pu'er fermentation. I actually really reminded me of that. Going to Bhutan and seeing this I felt like there was some you could really feel the ancient relationship between different tea making countries. It goes back a very long time, especially the Jatu. This is the branch for whisking. It reminded me of, it must be the ancestor of the bamboo whisk and stuff.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But there was
something really cool about it. Yeah. So that there's this one that's inspired in Mimasaka. like Paul, I've had some batches of. It almost looks the same, right? But no, this is Mimasaka Bancha inspired. So
Mimasaka Bancha inspired. And
yeah,
and you can watch an old tea festival episode where Pedro was actually boiling some bancha leaves, and we roasted it in the tea roaster. If I remember, yeah, that was in 2021. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Paul brought some leaves too. What do you? I don't know if the camera can see that or anything, but
Yeah, this is a white tea I produced this spring past from tea plants I have in Royston in the Comox Valley.
okay, we good? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Oh, pausing. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So you process these as a white tea?
Yeah, as a white tea, yeah. So I
Okay.
plucked 2 leaves in a bud and did some withering, very minimal processing for this one. I just really like the way that it's coming out. Very simple, but very beautiful, very clean, quite citrusy as well. But yeah, I'm really just trying to see what the terroir where I live has. And
Can I brew it while we're talking?
yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I make pretty small batches. I have about 10 plants on the ground right now. I'm producing 50 to 100 grams at a time, so very minimal amounts. But it's super fun doing it, and it's really helps you appreciate the tea plant when you're producing everything by yourself, plucking the leaves, understanding the whole process of how you create tea. It's been super fun, and yeah, it just kind of like sparks curiosity, and then actually getting to work with the plant and experiencing it. It's just been amazing.
Because these are plants you're growing right now.
Yeah,
These
these are all
from
ones.
seed.
Yeah, these are all seed germinated from seeds I got from Japan. This is an Asamaka I got from a guy in South Carolina, Table Rock Tea. This one's about 3 years old now, or these ones were just germinated this spring.
And that's coming along. That's cool.
Mhm.
And this is
it does make you appreciate the labor behind every cup of tea. Because when I
Yes,
tried to make matcha, I made probably like 60 grams,
yeah.
and I think all in all, I spent a good 8 to 10 hours just plucking that stuff and making the tencha and milling it, and it's insane.
I believe it.
And it was not really good
saying
matcha. There are some teas that actually come out okay, but my matcha was terrible.
the matcha was terrible.
It
That's
was not
hard.
good.
That's
No,
always
no.
a bit of a process. Hey, I always tell people if I was ever going to process my own tea, I'd probably go down the crimson teas or the oolongs or the white teas, because white tea is a hard wither, right? Using kind of like a passive environment,
Exactly. Yeah.
and you're able to, I guess, have less technical equipment. It's still important to know what you're doing to a certain extent, but another extent you can kind of just
Yeah, I literally just use a tiny little dehydrator that I have in my house. It's literally about this big.
yeah. Okay.
And then it's just all control and feeling it, smelling it, and seeing how it's progressing. And then when it gets to the point where I really enjoy the smell of it, and then I'll dry it a little harder. And then you get this beautiful tea right here. So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Oh, and sorry, you were going to say something there, Pedro?
No, I was just gonna say that the other thing that's really fun to do when you have tea trees is sometimes just drinking the tea leaves straight as they are. Stuff a thermos with a bunch of let me show you guys.
Sure.
But put a bunch of these guys in a thermos and add boiling water.
Oh,
It's
just the raw leaf.
very nice drink. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And if you happen to have some charcoal, and you can put some bamboo, a trunk of bamboo, and stuff this with leaves and fresh spring water. It's also very delicious.
Okay. No, that sounds awesome. Just like hanging out, like what is it called, grandpa style, when you just throw the tea leaves into the cup and you just leave it in there and you just sip away. It's a technical term. It's a technical
But
term.
it's even simpler than grandpa style, because these guys have not even been processed. You just
It's
stuff
so
a bunch
cool.
of,
You just throw them in. That's awesome. Because
it works really well.
you
You haven't developed
processing leaves,
so many of the
you lose a
aromatics
lot of
are
that
not
moisture,
developed,
right?
but it's tasty. Yeah.
It's tasty. Amazing. Okay, let's try some. We're gonna try some of Paul's tea without you here, Pedro. Cheers to you.
thinking of it.
Yeah, thinking of you. Cheers to everybody. Yeah. Honey. Kind of something like almost like a rose.
Yeah, very floral. I always find it turns very citrusy as well.
Yeah. Well, that's really nice. You got some, and good mouthfeel. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I just find this simple process. It just creates a really clean, light tea.
Good tea when when you finish drinking and you smell the empty cup and you just smell those tea oils and it's very exciting. That's very good.
Yeah.
That's very good. Cool. So I have some tea plants at my house that died. They survived until they were about 7 years old. So it was a kind of a
What?
Yeah, I was really sad. And how it happened is we transplanted them to different pots because they were getting too big for the pots they were in.
And they didn't like it.
we never put them into the ground, and the new pots didn't drain as well as the old pots,
And they drowned.
and they
Yeah.
died. Yeah. So I have since learned, and I kind of knew this beforehand. I thought that they would have enough drainage, but I guess they needed even more than I realized.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way a few times too. I'm like, okay, that's definitely enough. I'll mix some sand in. It's
Yeah.
okay, that should be enough drainage. And then, yeah, you just leave it a month and then you see them all start getting sad.
Yeah, and I was like, I tried to rescue it, and it was just, yeah.
Yeah, the simplest thing I've heard from people is just doing a potting mix, high porosity if you can, and then like 50% of that and 50% of sand. And it seems like a lot when you're mixing it. It's like it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of soil structure.
Yeah.
But they really, that's how they like to thrive. And by having that fast drainage, it tends to keep them from getting too wet on their feet and
Clogging.
dying off.
Okay. Do you have a trick you've kept for keeping your trees alive there, Pedro? How do you avoid this
You
problem?
know, I found it
And have you
since
even
I
experienced
started. I started about 20-something tree links back in February this year.
Uh-huh.
And one thing I learned is different plants like different things.
Okay.
There were some that were living indoors and they were very happy and thriving, and some were not. And there were a couple that seemed that they were just pretty much just dead. You know, they had long roots, but the tree ling was just not taking.
Right.
And so I took them outside, and one did really well in the sunshine.
Okay.
But I put a couple at the feet of that guy
Yeah.
over there,
Yeah.
extremely shaded place. And I thought the plant would be dead, but you know, a few months later, the plant is doing really well.
Amazing. Sometimes just an environmental change.
Some like the sunshine, some like the you know, the feet of the Buddha. Some like to be indoors a bit longer.
Sure.
It's yeah. So a bunch of my tea trees came from a random number of places.
Okay.
And there might be some that work better without that much drainage. I don't know.
I kind of have this sense that like the Japanese terroir is a little bit more similar to what we have here on Vancouver Island. So I have this idea that if I had Japanese
Seedlings?
cuttings or seedlings or seeds, and Paul, you actually got some Japanese seeds, and are these them? Or
This is them, yeah,
these are
all
them?
in this
Okay.
tray here.
Okay.
But yeah, I can totally relate to that, Pedro. Like, especially doing it from seed germination, like I'll probably do about 50 at a time, and then some of them will just start thriving, and it's all the same soil I use for all of them. Some will just thrive, and then some of them will just die off, and try to keep everything
Yeah.
the same. Like try to keep all the variables consistent. But yeah, sometimes some of them thrive in sun, some like it in shade more, some like more water, some like less.
And this is, I think, why a lot of farmers get really into nursery cuttings, where they are propagating using the clonal propagation technique, where you cut a bit of the top off during pruning season, and then you just plug that right into some soil, and you're able to get the same sort of genetic, very similar genetic attributes. Whereas when you plant from seed, it's like a wild card. Sometimes it's perfect for the environment, sometimes it's just didn't like it at all, and they call that land race. And these are essentially all land race, or in Japanese they say zaidai.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, they are for sure.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and that's just going to be, for farmers, this can be challenging because they want to harvest everything kind of at the same time if they can in the areas that they plant. Whereas when you plant during seed, they're going to be ready at different moments, some a few days later, some a week later, and they're going to prefer different environments, right?
Definitely.
So
Environments.
that I can imagine being, sorry, go ahead.
On that note, I think that sometimes that can be a feature, not a bug.
Okay.
Like for example, Ishimoto-san, the lady that we know in Tokushima, and Mark, the third video, the Ishimoto video, might come in handy here if you have it at hand. But Ishimoto's tea garden is super interesting. She's got, you know, not 3, not 5, but probably like 10 different cultivars all growing together in a mix.
Wow.
And you are totally right. Some will yield leaves before, some will yield leaves a few weeks after.
Yeah.
But what she does is she starts harvesting in mid January, and she finishes at the first week of March.
Wow.
So
Okay.
if a tree is not ready yet actually, you know, she does a completely different thing because she's harvesting in winter, so the trees are dormant. But if she doesn't like what one tree is giving, she just goes to the next one and leaves the first tree untouched. And one thing that I've noticed when I see all these multi cultivar wilder gardens is they tend to look really healthy. They tend to have fewer blights that will destroy everything because they're all different plants.
Right. Well, one thing that Paul brought up, and Mark, just let us know when you're ready for that video. But one thing that Paul brought up was that the young, that when you plant from seed, you get a taproot.
Yep.
And that goes really down deep, whereas when you plant clonally, you don't get that really long taproot. So they're considered ready to replant, at least in Japanese sort of farming systems. After they're about 35, 40 years old, they talk about replanting and getting in new, I guess, seedlings that they're going to plant. Whereas when you plant from seed, you can often get a much healthier, I don't know if it's always healthier, but you definitely get this very strong tea plant, and you can pull out some more minerality.
More established for sure. Yeah. Because like, for example, this plant, I would say within just a few months, the root is already to the very bottom of this pot. Like it just starts going quick.
Amazing. Okay, we're gonna watch this video that Pedro was wanting us to see. Pedro, what's the title of the video?
It's the third one. It's Ishimoto. It's
Ishimoto.
the Ishimoto video in Gancha iced tea, maybe.
Gancha iced tea. The third video.
Third video.
Do we see it? Yeah, we got it. Okay, amazing. All right.
Thank you, guys.
We're gonna show this.
I just wanted you guys to see the garden, Ishimoto's garden.
Okay. And 3, 2, 1 kind of thing. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, we're showing it. Is that it? That feels like it ends.
Yep.
Okay, amazing. Love the epic soundtrack. That's cool. Yeah.
I think what it does is it gives you annoyingly inconsistent batches of tea because every tree is different.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I haven't ever had a single bad batch from this lady, and it's really cool. Every time you open a tea box from her, it's a completely new experience.
I feel that way about the Bhutanese teas. Whenever we get any tea from Bhutan, since everything is seed propagated, every batch feels like a bit of a new
surprise.
World. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also cooperative, so a bunch of different people will make it, at least in the early days. But it's kind of awesome. There you be.
Yeah, I love that. I find it just keeps it so interesting. Every batch, even for myself, just doing small batches at home, every single batch I make is different. Every year it's a little different. The time of year that they flush out is different. And it just adds a lot of complexity to it, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, fair. No, I want to definitely get into seed propagation. I'm also interested in these clonals. I wonder, have either of you clonally propagated before? Have you done the seedlings into the soil?
I think Pedro mentioned he was just getting the hang of it there, eh? Yeah.
This guy has been here for 2 months now.
2 months,
so
okay.
They're not dead. Something's working.
That's good. That's
2 months in this guy. I think they're gonna work out.
That's nice.
Did you have any
now,
tricks?
I don't have enough space for all of these plants, so if any of you guys have some friends who need some plants, I will have some ready for propagation soon. Yeah, summer for you, man. I have a very little piece of land and more trees than what I can actually host.
Sure.
But it was a project of science. I just wanted to see what happens if we clone them. And I've failed for the last 12 years, but now these things have been alive for a couple of months. So maybe there's success coming.
Fingers crossed. That's awesome. Okay. And Paul, you've had some experience trying to, you guys have had very different techniques for making the seeds sprout and actually start growing. Do you have any tips for people in the audience and for those that are watching for how you might, once you do get your hand on some seeds, how you might go about turning those into trees?
Yeah, for sure. So the most important thing that I've realized over lots of years of trials and tribulations is sourcing good seeds is super important. I've gotten lots of seeds in where I've gotten no germination at all, but I've gotten some really good seeds in the last few years, and it's almost like 100% germination rate. And kind of the trick I do is I just use little trays like this. One thing I've learned, they really love high moisture. So typically what I'll do is I'll soak them for 24 to 48 hours. And then I'll do something where you'll put them in the sun and then you'll add more moisture and then it will dry out and you keep adding moisture to it. So it kind of expands the shell, a lot of contracting. And then I just pop them in here and I put a dome on top. I keep high moisture, and within 2 weeks, you start seeing them all crack open. And as soon as the hard shells on the outside crack open, you'll see the green shoots start coming out. And that's just been working great for me. Using these domes, and also with the seeds here, as they want to get a taproot, as soon as they start cracking, I tend to move them. I actually left these ones in way too long, which is why they're in this tray. So they tend to get a really long root that goes 90 degrees. But as soon as you see them crack open, you repot them into something tall like this, and just gives them all that room to grow down and establish strong roots.
Right, because of that taproot. If you put them in a more standard planting box, it's gonna not have the room it needs.
Yeah, giving them room to grow. It's one thing I've learned about tea plants. They want to spread out and they want to grow. From everything I've learned, you can keep them alive in pots, but they really like being in soil. They like a lot of space to kind of stretch down and grow their roots out for sure.
Interesting. Okay. And Pedro, you've had some success too. Do you have any tips for folks watching for how they might want to go about making their seeds a success?
I had zero success for over a decade until I started talking to that guy.
Okay, there you
And
go.
he managed to spread. So I had 2 kilograms of seeds from Vietnam legally imported last year.
Okay.
2 years
Nice,
ago.
I like that. That's good.
I gave them to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
99.9% of the seeds failed.
Okay.
Probably they were not very fresh seeds,
Sure.
but Paul managed to sprout one.
One of the
And,
12 that I had.
Wow.
We
Okay.
yeah, out of 2 kilograms of seeds, one sprouted literally.
Amazing.
And I pretty much just did what he said, and Googled it, and the instructions were pretty much the same. So now I have a few treelings, but that's pretty much it. That works.
Okay, then that's amazing. Well, I have a question then. I have a bunch of seeds that are from spring, and I've been meaning to plant them forever. I've even asked you questions, and I just keep on, not getting around to it. And I feel like I've lost my chance because they're too old, but they were literally from this spring.
Yeah,
So
I think they'd be fine. I'd give them a shot. I still have some seeds from last year.
would you just would it be just like asking for failure to just like throw them into the ground?
No, I mean, that works too. Even when the ones Pedro gave me, I kind of gave up on them and left them. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I just went back and looked, and I saw the one finally cracked open.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's like, yeah, I would say just get them in the ground, get them moist, and
See what
see what happens.
Would you do it in the fall, or is that also
If you do it inside, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So because I guess a lot of us probably think tea, we think tropical, but that's why I'm always reminded that in Japan, the winters do get, they're not crazy, but they're cold. They're cold enough, and it
You get
depends on where you
2 meters
are.
of
But
snow in Toyama. You get a lot of snow, man.
yeah,
And usually what I've seen is tea trees over there, they yield seeds around November, December.
okay,
So that's, I think, the natural time for the trees to drop the seeds.
fair. So maybe it is a good time to just throw them and see what
Yeah,
happens. Maybe
definitely.
they need that cold snap. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, and for example, Mandokoro, one of the places we like to go to with 500 years of history growing tea, they can't grow clonals because the snow gets to 2 meters and crushes anything they plant. But they can grow landrace, the seeded propagation that's ancient and old, the zaidai, that survives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that sometimes the seeds can just acclimatize to the environment that they're plugged into, and
Yeah.
that can make a huge difference. For sure.
I can speak of that for sure. Like I've had my tea plants probably put this high out of the ground, going through minus 18 degrees where I lived there in Comox, then
Wow.
getting snowed on, 2 feet of snow, just completely flattened to the ground. You would never think there was a tea plant under it, but then I'll clear it away, and then the snow melts, and then within the spring they all start bouncing back up, and as soon as we get some nice, warm, consistent weather, all the leaves start flushing out again. So they are resilient. They want to live.
That's amazing. And I often hear minus 16 is the lowest you can go, but you tracked minus 18.
Yeah, I
and
had
they still
18, and
survived.
they were covered in frost. And when I
And-
was looking at them, I'm like, I would be surprised if they survived this.
And I always tell people they grow tea in Siberia. So like, we have options, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In Siberia?
Yeah. That's what I heard. Yeah.
Dang, now I want
I
to
don't know. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've read a lot too is that the more they get stressed
I'm
out
gonna
during
Google
the
this
cold
now.
season, then the more beautiful oils, the more flavor they have when you harvest in the spring. So.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And I often bring this up in the tea shop, is just talking to people about actually when plants have a harder time growing, they have this increase in those volatile oils, and it's the volatile oils that give us that incredible flavor complexity. And so, I actually think that's why high elevation teas are so sought after, because the environment is harsh. It's actually hard for them to grow, harder than if you were going to grow them in a tropical environment. Like in Japan, the tea leaves you harvest in the summer when it's all tropical with tons of moisture and really hot are way less interesting than the tea leaves you harvest after the winter dormancy, with that slow growth that produces this really interesting flavor. So I would say we probably have an ideal environment for growing tea on the West Coast here.
Yeah, and I would also add that we might even be surprised which cultivars thrive, because out of my cultivars here, the one that has grown the most and actually thrives after the snow is this guy. And it's not a very small tea leaf; it's the giant one.
Oh wow, yeah.
And this guy has been heavily trimmed because my wife has complained about the size of the plant. At some point, it starts creating too much shade. So
Amazing.
This guy has been trimmed lovingly, but it has pretty large leaves.
Cool. Can you show us your tea? I know you're trying to show us earlier before we started, but the plants behind you, is that?
Oh, yeah. Let me, so these guys are the bigger plants.
Okay.
And let me show you the seedlings. Now, they're in a separate section here. Here they go.
Okay.
This is the biggest guy.
Okay. Amazing.
And look at this guy. It's completely different. This guy had baby purple leaves when
Did you say
few months
purple?
ago. Yeah, purple.
Lovely.
This guy was purple, and this guy here too was purple.
Okay. In Japan, they have a cultivar called Benifuki.
This one comes from Ishimoto's place. This is from Shishikoi, and this guy was kindly gifted by Paul.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay.
That's nice to see him doing good.
Yeah, the guy said he's doing fine. He's the shortest one, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but he's green and happy, so he might do okay.
What do you guys do when you travel? Like, you travel a lot, Pedro. Paul, like, if you need to leave your plants and it's summertime, is it just like they talk about not irrigating your plants in Japan, but do you irrigate? Like, how do you keep them from dying?
Yeah, I irrigate. Where I live, we have pretty sandy soil. It's pretty fast draining. Yeah. So especially in the summer when we get a lot of those heat waves, I tend to irrigate them.
You do.
But they are resilient. I don't think I've ever lost any of my more established plants from lack of water. But I do tend to stay on it. Like
Okay.
Yeah, like I'd water them at least every 2 weeks when it's hot out, for sure.
At least every 2 weeks when it's hot out. Okay. And you do like kind of a really solid session.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
How are you with irrigation or watering or anything? Are you?
I did when they were tinier.
Yeah.
I think that the roots are deep enough right now. And these guys are quite happy. I've never had any trouble with them. I think the roots are pretty deep. Now, when I planted them, I put a bunch of river rocks.
Oh, okay.
And so I dug a larger hole, and these guys are not that old. They're 6 years old now, I think.
Yeah.
But I had a bunch of river rocks that just for the roots to spread it a bit.
Yeah.
Richmond is very sandy and marshy. So I think we have a lot of water around here, and I've never needed to water these guys since they're that large.
Okay.
The little ones, the ones that are in pots, yes, they are being watered, and they are kept in pots for two reasons. Number one, I think they're too small right now for the winter. So if we have a big snowfall, those guys are going inside.
I see.
And number two, I don't have space for them. And those guys, they're the kind of trees that will grow to be 2 meters high. Yeah. So I've been giving them away to people who have space and who live more than 10 meters above sea level, so that in 300 years, somebody can drink that tea.
Well, that's
hence,
exciting.
Hence one is going to Paul's place, because, maybe in 300 years, somebody will go to Comox and drink some of that.
It'll be these old trees
yes.
just contributing to that 300 years from now generation. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. So one will be
very good
up at Comox. I've seen that place, and it is definitely more than 10 meters above sea level. So the tree will be safe.
Yeah. We're about 60 where I am, I think.
60,
so.
Okay.
Perfect.
Have you ever experimented with growing on a slope? Are you okay with the flat? Like, you often see, they talk about growing tea on a slope for that better drainage, because drainage seems to be so key for keeping the plants alive. But you talked about the river rock solution. Paul, do you do anything to help with drainage, or is it just the nature of the area where you're at when they go in the ground? Are you doing something similar?
Yeah, I'm actually really fortunate where I am, because we have kind of the perfect soil conditions for growing tea plants. So it's slightly acidic soil, and it's also really fast draining, quite sandy where we are, which is also quite unique for where we are too. So I'm super fortunate to have that on the farm we're in. But no, generally for me, I just put them in the ground the way they are, and they just seem to love it there.
Okay.
And I checked the pH, and it kind of balances out perfectly for them too. So,
Okay. Have you ever planted them in an area that the pH is off and that has affected things?
yeah, actually, so one of the things I've actually kind of been struggling with is trying to nail all the pH for when they're in pots.
Okay.
Because I've had a lot die this summer, and I've even had up to like a dozen die at a time, pretty much at the exact same time. And so I bought a pH meter, and I've been checking it a lot. And one thing I noticed is that the soil was way more acidic than I realized it was, because I know they like slightly acidic soil. So I was adding a little bit of soil acidifier to it to make sure it was acidic. And I think in that process, I put way too much. So I was checking the pH, and generally from what I've read, you want it like 5.5, 6, somewhere around there. But some of the ones I was checking were as low as 4, even like a little lower.
Yeah, nothing can survive.
Yeah, and so that's what I realized.
That's actually lower pH than my kombucha.
Yeah, there you go. So
No,
yeah. So again, trial and tribulations is one thing I've learned. But again, when I put them in the ground, I check the pH of the soil. It's pretty much dialed in right where they are. So
Okay.
I'm really grateful to have that for sure.
So you can just kind of make sure that you're in that 5.5 to 6 rate. And I imagine, again, that would change depending on cultivar because, depending if you're in a high elevation or a low elevation or all these things, like
It all plays a part.
It all plays a part. I had a cultivar called Sochi at one point. It sounded Russian to me. So I was excited. And that was actually the one that died after being 7 years old. So it made it through a lot of winters. Yeah. And it was just changing the pot that made all the difference. I think, how are we for time, Mark? 5 minutes? Okay, 7 minutes. Did we have any questions from the audience for Paul and Pedro? Yes.
We saw your stall upstairs and you had the little seed balls.
Mhm.
Is that the same seeds that you've grown these with?
They are,
I'm
yeah.
going to repeat the question. So the seed balls that you had, that Paul had up at the area upstairs, the question is, are they the same as the ones that are been used to sprout these sprouts here?
Yep, they are the same ones. Yeah. I always keep a few just to show people how they are, but they're the exact same ones I used for this from the same batch that I got them as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've even actually had some of my plants on the farm have actually produced seeds as well, which has been super cool. I have one so far that's done the full cycle of being grown on the farm I live on and then also produced into a tea plant. So I haven't put it in the ground yet, but I'm super excited to get that one in, and then hopefully that will produce some seeds in the near future, and let's continue that circle of life.
And it'll get stronger and stronger in the environment that it's in. Awesome. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Are plants ever grafted?
Are tea plants ever grafted? Yeah, they are. I can answer this question. There's actually, we have one at our tea shop called Jingguanyin, where they've grafted Tiguanyin onto Huangjingui rootstock. It's a more contemporary technique. I haven't heard much about it happening traditionally. Maybe Pedro, you've heard of it more than this, but Paul, have either of you experimented with grafting?
Never.
I haven't.
I've not
myself either.
experimented. I've heard about it, but I've never experimented.
Okay, so yes, it does exist, and there is sometimes when they want to, like in apples or something, where they want to keep the pre-existing rootstock so that they can harvest sooner, but they want to change the cultivar. There has been some successful experiments. Yeah. Any other questions? Sure.
The larger plant, is that the same species as the small ones here?
Is the larger plant the same? I'm just saying for the YouTube audience, that's why. But is the larger plant the same as these ones here? Was that your question?
Yeah, it's actually different. This is a Assamica variety that I got from a farmer in South Carolina called Table Rock Tea. He's been a big producer of tea in the U.S., and so I've been following him for a while, and he always puts up a little pre-order every fall. So again, if you're looking to get good seeds, I've used his, and they germinate great. And so yeah, this is the Assamica variety, where these are the Camellia sinensis variety.
What's the name of the company again?
Table Rock Tea.
Table Rock Tea. Okay, awesome. And
That
Pedro-
guy, by the way, has some really good instructions on how to sprout them.
Oh, cool.
And a
okay.
really good
I
book as
consider
well.
that guy and Paul my sources of information for sprouting.
Paul and Table Rock Tea. Okay, amazing.
Nice.
Pedro, do you know any of the cultivars behind you, or roughly any stories for them, or no? Okay, all right.
No idea,
yeah, we're
man.
just rocking and rolling.
One of them, that guy's supposed to be Sochi, the little guy in the corner.
Okay.
But this giant one is also supposed to be Sochi, and it's clearly not.
Okay.
So, I think they might have been mislabeled. Because let me just show you how different the leaves are. They had exactly the same label,
Yeah.
and
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty wildly different.
so no, they're not. I do know that they make some really different tea.
Fair.
I know about the ones that are growing from seed. I know where those guys came from. They're either from Tokushima
Yeah.
or from Yunnan, from Huajuliangzi, and from Banjiang.
Okay. So Japan and China, essentially.
Yeah. And these bigger ones, not the slightest idea because they were clearly mislabeled. There is one though that came with a label that says something like blushing beauty,
Right.
and it is purple-ish. And then I read that some of these purple plants, they're like butterfly pea flowers that change colors.
Okay.
So the lady that gave me that plant said it doesn't make delicious tea, and actually it does. It makes some really nice green tea.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is, just like butterfly pea flowers, it changes color.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you make green tea, like just kamairi with the young leaves, it's reddish, and if you add lemon, it doesn't taste great, but it becomes purple. Oh yeah, I mean it becomes pink.
Are you sure it's Camellia sinensis or a lookalike?
Well, it looks very much like a camellia. The fruits, the flower is very much like a camellia. And it came with a label that said Camellia sinensis blushing beauty.
Okay. I think we're learning also that there might be some, we might not know if what we're being sold is accurate, if the leaves look that different, right? But, it's just, who knows? I think it's like this with all plants, really, unfortunately. Being a botanist really does help, but I'm not. And I think that it's also just fun to just, work with what you got and to experience some really fun stuff like that. That sounds really great. Tea that changes the liquid color. That's kind of, that's apparently though.
Apparently it happens with some of the, with some of the Taliensis cultivars. And there's one, I don't know if you've heard of Son Rouge in Japan.
Yeah.
Son Rouge is apparently a newer Japanese cultivar that came from Camellia Taliensis.
Yeah, I was just going
and
to talk
the
about
same thing
Taliensis.
happens. It's purplish and it changes color.
Used a lot in Puer too, Taliensis, right? Like this is in certain regions, anyways. It's my you're the Puer specialist. Why am I telling you this? Yeah, yeah.
Some is used for.
Yeah. But I've been hearing that sometimes people when they're packing their bricks and cakes, you'll have these folks harvesting that, especially if they're doing wild tree cakes, where they think it's Camellia sinensis, but sometimes they make mistakes. And you'll have non-Camellia sinensis plants in there with it. So it's kind of interesting. But that's a whole other can of worms. But Camellia sinensis being the tea plant. And it's for those watching, Camellia sinensis is what makes your green teas, white teas, black teas, oolongs. Everything comes from the same plant. And it's all about control over an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase. And that it's responsible for browning the leaves and then manipulating both passive and actively the oxidation of those leaves, using the environment or cooking and kind of manipulating things. So yeah, kind of awesome that you guys get to do that in your homes.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's very interesting.
Okay.
And if you want to fall in love with tea even more, get your hands on a plant and just start experimenting with it.
So if people have questions for you, Paul, is there any way that you have an Instagram or some way that they can ask questions? Or
yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, today I'm at the table if anyone wants to come by and ask questions. But I also have Instagram. My name there is Paul You Need Is Nature. So feel free to add me and ask any questions. I'll share all the information I have. So
yeah, and those watching can go on to the program if you want to see that, and we'll put it in the description here too, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, you'll be inundated.
Sounds
and then
good.
Pedro, how do folks find you if they want to ask questions as well? If that's cool.
Instagram's easy.
Yeah.
O5T.com at letter O, number 5. T as in tomato, E as in Ernest, A as in apple.
Yeah, we can.
So O5T.
I think people mess up on the O5. The O is the alphabetical O, not
It's
the numerical.
not a 0. Yeah,
Zero.
it's a no. Yeah.
And
Other than
you
that,
can check them out
you
there.
might
and-
find me sometimes at Jaga Silk or eating oysters at Paul's place.
Yeah, GG's. You got to check out GG's Oyster Bar. The tea program there, blow your mind. The oysters.
And the oyster program. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how to express it, except that it's just, it was life-altering. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for being in the audience. And for those watching, thank you. And thank you, Paul. Thank you, Pedro. Big hands. And we'll be moving on.
Thanks for having me.
And Jen will be taking over.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark, too, for making it happen from far away.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Mark. Okay. All right. We good? Excellent. Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.